Hello, Daily Bible readers. This is your day 180 preview of our reading of the New Testament and of Genesis. Today's reading will begin the book of James, and so, of course, we'll start with James chapter 1. Now, the book of James is probably the earliest of all of the New Testament books which we read, at least the earliest to have been written. And so, what you're going to find in this book is particularly how the Christian is now supposed to live in this new world of Christianity. James, who is considered by most to have been the half brother of Jesus, one that originally would have not believed in Jesus, but according to 1 Corinthians chapter 15, having then seen Christ risen from the dead, he now believes and becomes a very prominent figure, particularly from the church that meets in Jerusalem. And so, as he writes this, he writes it from the perspective of now that you are a Christian, how should you live in your day to day life? And so, we're going to look at each of the chapters in the book of James from a particular standpoint of what we're going to call religion. And religion is about how you live your life. How are you going to go about your life in a way that is fitting for what you profess to believe and what your where your hope is, and we find that first in James chapter 1 in what we're going to call pure religion. In fact, the last verse of James chapter 1 says that pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this: to visit the orphans and the widows in their trouble and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. And so in chapter 1, we have a discussion of pure religion. What is religion that is undefiled? What does it look like? Now, what it doesn't look like is a life without trouble, without trials, without temptations. In fact, the chapter starts off discussing the fact that these trials and various trials, he calls them in verse 2, test your faith. But by testing that faith, you develop patience, and patience has the ability to make you perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Now, that seems like a difficult concept because we're predisposed to think, what is in what way can I make my life easier and with less trouble and trials? Christianity doesn't set out to do that. Christianity sets out to provide you the ultimate reward, and sometimes that's going to mean facing troubles and trials. Because that seems so foreign to us, sometimes we uh, don't understand it. And the way James describes that is lacking of wisdom. He'll start saying, verse 5, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God that giveth to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. Now, that knowledge or that wisdom is not a wisdom of how to do, calculus or algebra. Wouldn't that be great? You just ask God and poof, you know how to do it. But rather it's a how do I know? How do I have the wisdom that if I will endure the trial set before me, that I will obtain something worthwhile, that I can be made complete, and so it says just ask, and there's a whole book, several books, multiple individuals throughout time that have shown that faith through trials and temptations produces something great. In fact, we just finished in the book of Hebrews looking at several of those in Hebrews chapter 11 and, of course, rolling over into chapter 12. Now, but if you're going to ask, you need to be ready for the answer and to accept that answer. The double minded man, the man that says, well, I ask and I see it, but still not really sure. Maybe I'll follow it while things are going well. And if things get tough, then I'll fall into something else. Well, that man, James said, will receive nothing. That's that he's unstable in all of his ways. And so, because as we look at particularly someone that is rich versus someone that's poor, because oftentimes that's the way we determine if this guy's got a lot of money, then things are going well for him. If he doesn't have a lot of money, maybe he's not making the right choices in life. James says, does it really matter? In the end, guess what both of them do? The rich man and the poor man, they both die. In fact, just like the grass does, the grass is going to fade when the sun rises, just like the flower will. It doesn't matter whether you're grass or you're a flower. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or whether you're poor. The question is, will you be faithful during those temptations? And if you are, then James gives us a beatitude in verse 12. Blessed is the man who endures temptation, for when he is, or when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those that love him. There you go. There's your ultimate reward here in our pure religion before God when facing these trials. Now, doesn't mean there won't be temptations along the way. Obviously, we're human, and there are things that we are attracted to that God has turned us away from that are not in accordance with the will of God. That doesn't mean that God put the temptation there in front of you, but every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. And then when lust is conceived, it bringeth forth sin, or it gives birth to sin. The New King James actually says, and sin, when it is full grown, when it's all grown up, brings forth death. Now, what we have a tendency to do is to say, yeah, but I don't have what I need. This James says, don't be deceived. My beloved brethren, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and cometh down from the Father of lights, in whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. There's not a degree of difference in the goodness that God pours out upon us. He has brought us forth, because here's what matters. He's brought us forth by the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. If you have faith that what God has provided without a degree of difference to us is the opportunity for salvation, and we've latched hold of that, then what could be taken away from you that would mean you turn against that? You have all that you need in that. So, my beloved brethren, be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man work produces not the righteousness of God. This is not just an injunction against becoming angry quickly, but it's an injunction against turning away from God because things aren't going right in this world and in your life. That's quickly to say, well, then if that's the way God's going to be, then I don't want to follow that God. I can't believe in a God that would let me suffer. I can't believe in a God that would let me be sick, or my loved one to be sick, my loved one to die. I can't believe in a God that would allow me to be persecuted because I put my faith and my trust in him. Well, that's a pretty rash statement, seeing as how Jesus let his own son die on behalf of us. So, therefore, lay aside all that filthiness and the overflowing. I still like superfluity of naughtiness from the King James, but the overflowing of wickedness is what that means. And receive with meekness the implanted word that is able to save your soul. That's where we need to focus on, not on troubles in this life, but on the word of God, which saves us from eternal trouble, we might say. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. Look unto the perfect law of liberty. Continue in it, not as a forgetful here, but as a doer of the work. This one will be blessed in what he does. If any of you thinks he is religious, that's what we're talking about is pure religion. Does not bridle his own tongue, think before you speak. He deceives his own heart, and his religion is useless. What do we do then? Pure religion, undefiled before God and the Father, is this: to look at those who are in deep trouble, widows, orphans, those who are in their trouble, the things that we're thinking of turning against God with, and then we see somebody else. I always hate to say there's always somebody worse, because there's got to be somebody at the bottom of that list. But are you it? And if you're not, then that means there's somebody that you can look toward, that you can help. And in doing so, you keep yourself from being unspotted from the world, because you're looking after the things that matter the most, the things that pertain to God, to his word, and you're helping others who are in more trouble than you, because you have faith in the word that is able to save your soul. These have been my thoughts on James chapter 1. I hope they've been helpful for you. And as always, our prayer is to allow the word of God to be a lamp unto your feet and a light unto your path.